Hello, good morning, everyone. So we are ready to start our empowerED live session, and I am just very happy to welcome everyone. It's a Sunday morning. It's a Sunday in the Philippines. That means it's church day. It's prayer time. So I hope that you were able to get to visit, get to go to church if that is allowed already in your own localities. Right now, I'm in Manila, and I've been in my place in my apartment for almost I don't know around 4 months since March, and we're just very happy to welcome everyone. So we are very excited to talk about our topic today. Our topic is it's a very simple very simple question. What makes an educator effective in the distance education modality? What will help us survive? So I've invited a number of guests who would be able to give us different perspective. Before we start, I just want to give a shout out to everyone who's been watching. So we are live on empowerED Facebook, empowerED YouTube channel, and you're seeing on the screen right now. We have a guest from or viewers from Pampanga and Butuan in Mindanao. Someone is coming from Montreal, Masbate, Jats Jennifer, Dream Rose from Antique. We have someone coming from Bohol, and a lot of people are coming in slowly. And of course, my greatest supporter coming from my province in Abra. I'm just so happy to welcome everyone. And I spot familiar faces. Caroline Renada, it's a good friend of mine. She's been a very, very consistent, ardent supporter of empowerED. So thank you so much. Please take some time to share to your colleague and to your friends, teachers, community that we are going live right now. And this session will basically, you're not gonna hear how to. This is not a how to workshop. Instead, this is more of a reflective activity sharing, and it will the things that we'll be talking about will be coming from the experience of the people that I have with me right now. So I'm gonna slowly bring them up, bring them out on my screen right now, and let's try to get to know everyone. So I'm just gonna put everyone else so that I could do it in just one time, and then later on, let's get to talk to everyone. All right, so let's start getting to know our guest first. Let's start with the person to my right, Dr. Ferdinand Pitagan. So I'm just happy to welcome Dr. Ferdinand Pitagan. Hi, to say hi to our audience.
Hi, Jim, and hi to everyone. Thank you very much for taking time to join us. Hopefully, you would learn something from us, and we could also learn something from you, and
Yes.
we all move forward to continue education during this pandemic.
All right. So
Blessed
Dr.
Monday, everyone.
Yes, Dr. Ferdinand Pitagan is the Dean of the School of Teacher Education in the National Teachers College in the Philippines. So let's hear some perspective from an educator for the higher education, and let's see how his expertise is also in ICT, distance education, open education resources, basically all those things that we hear about technology in education. So he has led some projects with UNESCO. He's very much connected also with the Department of Education with some projects. So we're excited to hear from you. And then the next one is Dr. Henry Magahis. Dr. Henry Magahis is a new doctor. So congratulations, Henry, for passing, for getting that PhD degree. That was last week. Was it, Henry, last week? Or 2 weeks
Wow.
ago?
Wow, congrats.
Congrats.
Yeah. So Dr.
June
Henry,
30. Actually, this is my first engagement after that journey.
all right. Dr. Henry is the Senior High School Research Coordinator of Salle Santiago Zobel School. He'll be speaking about the experiences of high school teachers, right? So let's talk about your experience later on, Dr. Henry. And then, of course, going in circular motion. We have Eda Gimenez from New York. She's live in New York, and it's around 10. Is it 10 p.m. at your in New York,
Yeah, it's
Eda?
a little past 10 p.m. here. Yeah, honestly, I'm really excited to be part of the conversation. Really excited to hear from everyone. Here at Buncee, my role is really to be able to collaborate and communicate with all of the different educators across the world. So yeah, I'm definitely excited to hear everything that everyone's perspective.
Right. So Ida is part of the product development of team of Buncee. There are a lot of Microsoft education experts or trainers in the Philippines. It's a big community, and you might have heard or come across Buncee. Ida is part of the team, so maybe she can give us perspective on how tech products or tech companies, education technology companies are giving supporting teachers at this times the pandemic. So I appreciate the outsider, quote and unquote perspective, but still being there to really support our teachers. And of course, last but not the least, I want to welcome again my friend Mio from Shiga, Japan. If you've been following our empowerED podcast, she's been one of our guests there, and she talked about her experience of connecting students around the world through Skype, Skype call, Microsoft Skype, and everything. So, Mio, how are you?
Great. First of all, thank you, Jim, for inviting me to this wonderful live session. And yeah, I am fine today, and I'm really excited and hope to learn a lot from other educators, this amazing community. And also, I want to share as much as possible that I am having now. Thanks.
All right. So thank you, Mio. Mio is a grade school teacher or primary teacher in Japan, and what we did was to really get this experts who will be representing a certain age level or range among our teachers. We have a lot of different audience right now, and sometimes they would ask Jim, all of the guests are from K to 12. Are there any guests from the higher education? So there, Dr. Ferdinand Pitagan is here with us to speak about it. So let's go to the first question. What makes an educator effective in distance education? I mean, like right on point right now. How do we describe an effective distance educator? The whole Philippines are going to start. I mean, most of the school will have to start around August, and everyone is like, I've heard there are a lot of non-confidence coming out. They're scared. Teachers are scared. Let's be honest with that. They don't know what to do, right? I mean, they know the plans, but they don't know how to turn it into action.
Mhm.
So, anyone who would like to start first?
Okay, I'll start. Okay. In the perspective of higher education institution, before the COVID, online learning, distance education is catered only to expertise in open education, those who are offering blended learning. But because of the pandemic now, all teachers, regardless of expertise, regardless of year level, have to be expert in distance education. In the in research in online learning, there are 12 roles of an effective distance learning educator. Number one would be you have to be the context expert. If you're teaching science, so at least you're a major in science. Number two would be an instructional designer. Before the pandemic, all teachers, K to 12, HEIs are doing their lesson slug, their lesson plan. Only now, they have to take into the context of online learning. Virtual meeting, independent study should be factored in, as well as putting online resources like open educational resources. And of course, the assessment of learning. How do you now assess and as effective educator your online learning environment so that you could, facilitate heightened engagement, thereby resulting into learning. And the role now of a distance educator, if I might say, would be that of a facilitator, that of the guide on the side, that of a moderator. You could just imagine um, giving the power of education to the learners. Because of technology, it is a heightened learner-centered learning environment, because the information available to the teacher is also available to the students. And because our students are more tech savvy and media savvy than we do, they could produce more content than we are, right? So that shifting role of a teacher-centered lecture, checking of attendance, recitation would evolve and our teachers should embrace that. Also, I always say in all my webinars and all the seminars, the teacher should transcend the screen. We should be able to know to touch the humanness of our students. Our students should be able to feel that friendly, comfortable learning environment in which we provide in the face-to-face traditional classroom. So we should transcend the screen. We should really, put forth a comfortable, friendly, at the same time very engaging learning environment. And of course, for HEIs, they have to put really a team of agile, adaptive, resilient council that would encapsulate what they want to do as a academic institution, so that everything would be seamlessly converge. Thank you.
Yeah. So my cat has just jumped behind me.
What's the name of the cat, Jim? Empower Ed?
No, it might it the name will give everyone a clue of the boy band that I like. His name after a BTS.
Jimin.
Jungkook. Jungkook.
JK.
Yeah. So that's just a side thing. It's just there behind me. Dr. Ferdinand, what I'm getting from you is for higher ed, it's very important that they are experts of their content.
Yes.
They're higher ed expert,
Yes.
and there's a certain respect for independent learning.
Yes.
Students, right? For their
Yes.
students, because they're much older. So their role right now is to make sure that they designed learning experiences where students can practice independent learning,
Yes.
but at the same time be still I don't know, be able to be there to become a guide on the side.
Yes.
So I'm noting that because in distance education we have what we call as the teaching presence.
Yes.
The teaching present it's not anymore the teacher, or the learning resources become an extension of the teacher teaching presence.
Yes.
Let's talk about that later, because I like that you mentioned it. We've been talking about resources, but no one's mentioning that idea that all the resources that you make are extension of yourself. Right.
Yes.
So thank you, Dr. Ferdy. Dr. Henry, what are your thoughts about being an effective educator?
Well, I totally agree with Dr. Ferdy. We've been trying to integrate technology for the past how many decades now? Okay, like for example, in De La Salle Zobel, before this pandemic, we've been trying to integrate concepts like blended learning, flipped learning, and then other important elements or important factors that can give our offering engaging, probably, or can make our offering as an institution more relevant, especially we are dealing with tech savvy students, okay, wherein they know how to manipulate the technology, they know how to independently facilitate their own understanding online or even offline. But the challenge now is we have so many limitations as a country. Okay, I guess we have guests from the public institution right now. They want it. Okay, they know why they are expected to do certain things, but the challenge now is how can we manage these changes with the current scenario or condition we are facing right now as a country. Okay, so I would like to point out three important elements for our first item, for our first question. Okay, number one, I think as a distance learning educator, we are expected to be flexible. Okay, Personally, uh, I love how the Department of Education is addressing the concern now. Like for example, if a certain community, okay, they don't have, for example, internet connection, the DepEd group will offer a different medium or a different manner how to go about this distance education or the process of teaching and learning. But for places like Manila or probably the cities here in Manila who can maximize the use of internet, they will offer as well a different medium of learning. Okay, flexibility, I guess, is the first important element if we would like to be successful as educators, okay, in this type of learning or in this mode of learning, if I may use that term. Second, the collaboration will, as always, be helpful, okay, as educators if we want to survive in this kind of learning or in this mode of learning. When I say collaboration, we are expected not only to collaborate with our colleagues or with our co-teachers, but we are also expected to collaborate with different experts. Like, for example, you teachers have the five of us now who can assist you, who can guide you probably if we want to really be successful probably in integrating this type of or mode of learning. So you need to look for possible collaborations so that you can learn from them and you can share your experience with them as well. Okay? And lastly, I agree with Doc Ferdy. We will transition now from our quote unquote traditional assessment, okay, to a more output oriented assessment, probably. So, again, I will always go back to flexibility because I'm sure the multiple type assessment, the fill in the blanks assessment, we love that. Okay, we love those types of assessments. But during this pandemic, we are expected to transition to certain uh, practices, probably. Okay, so overall, this online distance learning is probably new when it comes to the medium where we do it, but certain practices from before are still applicable. Okay, if we want to really transition from that regular learning environment to this online distance learning, we are expected to unlearn to relearn so many things. Okay, thank you, Jim.
Yeah, picking up from your what you have said, Dr. Handy, I love that you emphasize flexibility and collaboration. More importantly, I think it's collaboration. We know how hard the life of a teacher is in the Philippines. I mean, our salary is not that competitive. The benefits are not as good as the teachers in other countries. Let's make it real, and there's a certain the student teacher ratio and the work, it's just so big that we cannot handle everything. So it's important that we need to collaborate. I mean, I'm speaking from my perspective, both in private and in public schools, that the collaboration itself is a key part of finding solution for this time around. That's high school perspective, and Dr. Henry talked about a lot of things. Let's go to Mio. Mio is in Japan, in Shiga, Japan, and they have been doing distance education for a while now, and she's teaching English in primary grades. Mio, I would like to know your insight based on your experience, maybe on how you wanted to become, and she's been training other teachers also to become
Yeah.
an effective educator. Like Leo.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So I teach English to mainly year 16, 18, so it's maybe high school students, maybe. Yeah, and yeah, I totally agree with the two teachers, and yeah, that's actually what I wanted to share. And anyway, so yeah, before conducting distance learning, we need to know what we can do with distance learning. So even during pandemic, we can do distance learning, but it shouldn't be the same as the general classroom, general teaching. So we have to know what we can do. And the biggest advantage of the distance learning that we can do what we can't do in the general classroom. So in my experience, I teach students age 16 to 17, and 80% of them are Japanese. This is also based on the fact that Japan is almost like homogeneous. But that's because the foreign perspective is a little bit ignored in Japan. And this often causes discrimination or bias against other cultures or other values. And the reason why I love to conduct distance learning is that we can connect everywhere around the world. And that also enables us to learn different perspectives we don't catch in our daily life. So we know that there's a lot of differences around the world, but also we should know the similarities. And this will make our students have a better life in the future. And so, again, I think we need to know what we can do with the distance learning, and we need to focus on that. Yeah, that's my idea.
All right. Thank you, Mio. So we're trying to paint a picture right now, and we want to hear from Eda from New York, her perspective as someone who's coming from an organization, a company that supports teacher right now. I mean, how far is your group, Eda, supporting our teachers right now?
Yeah, I mean, if I could echo some of the sentiments and give a little context as to where my sentiments come in. So in my role at Buncee, I have the opportunity really to collaborate with educators literally across the world. And so what I've really come to summarize here is it's similar to what Dr. Ferdy as well as Dr. Henry have mentioned too, where it's a little of a combination of really the fact that when we moved to this remote environment, it became even more about the students. Obviously students were always a part of the conversation, but now it's the context of the delivery of it. And then with that, my sort of perspective here, it's the power of the community to actually bring that student engagement and success to life. And so what I mean by all of this is that when remote learning happened, it was such a quick shift for everybody, right? It came so fast that at the same time our students went home. We didn't really know how to operate it that way. But then when our students went home, we started thinking, do we give them the same assignments like the way that we did? We just, use a video recording screen or something to just deliver to them, right? So big questions in the air. But when, the next few weeks started to happen, what we realized is that there's an actual disconnect between us as educators as well as our students. The fact that you actually don't get to walk through them, throughout the entire day and say, hey, how are you doing? What are the things that you're learning? Where are you struggling? And maybe you don't get to see those aha moments as you're in the class. So I think one of the big things that I've really come to see is that we need to work together as a community, whether it's the teachers to the students, the teachers to the parents, and even the administrators, and how they can combine everyone to really figure out ways where we can actually understand how to engage our students better. So one of my key takeaways literally from all of my conversations is that, how do you think about, remote learning in the context of, as an educator, do you really understand where your students are mentally at? Because what we've noticed in this whole remote learning environment is that the students don't get as engaged potentially because maybe they don't have the support system around them. Maybe the content's not as engaging and maybe it needs different deliveries. So what are the ways that we can actually work together as, a tool? Maybe it's Buncee, but maybe how you work together also with parents and also the different educators and the entire school community to really engage the students. So that's really, I think, my big takeaway is like, the collaboration and the fact that we need to really understand where our students are at throughout this.
Eda, that's a wonderful way of putting all of the thoughts that we have right now. It also gives me a perspective of the vision, maybe the vision of your company as Buncee. But I also want to think that you're coming from your experience also. In New York, you see how we've seen how New York was badly hit. in one of my sessions in my podcast, I talked to Dr. Nadia Lopez. She's a principal in Mott Bridges Academy in Brooklyn. And despite being in New York, like I expected, maybe in New York they're doing online distance learning. No, I've heard that they have iPads, coming from the government or whatever. But then Dr. Nadia would came in and say, even in their school they have learning packets because not every there's a question for accessibility, equity that's always there. But I love that you pointed out the role of the community in facing this challenge. A lot of the narrative right now in the Philippines, sorry, just to be honest, also, it's always like, what will the Department of Education do? I mean, why is this the decision? We understand because they're the one leading the whole education system, but we don't get to hear like what's happening with the parents. What are the plans of the parents to support the teachers? It's always like this is the needs. I mean, I do understand. We need to understand that we put the learner at the center, and like what Eda has mentioned, parents, all members of the school community should be in that kind of mindset of thinking. So thank you. That's a wonderful insight, Eda. The idea of collaboration, working together, supporting. And thank you for saying again that even at this time, I mean, this time more than ever, the question of the learner at the center of every decision that we make it's highlighted more than ever. So Ida, that's a wonderful insight. Anyone who could like add to our wonderful thoughts?
Okay. I think one of the challenges of academic institutions, may it be K-12 of HEI, is to put forth a holistic, inclusive, flexible, adaptive learning environment. So the Department of Education as well as the Commission on Higher Education has put forth that all our learning institution would be learner-centered. And this is now true, as everyone have mentioned, Dr. Henry is into this, Eda, and as well as Mio-san, is saying that because of technology, we are now giving the power of learning to the learner. This is a purely learner-centered in its purest form. But the challenge now is how do we now design the learning environment? Okay, say for example, if I might say, the Department of Education has reviewed the K-12 curriculum. So they have decongested the curriculum and retained only 40% of the number of competencies. So from 15,000, it is now about 5,000. So, and the Commission on Higher Education has put forth policy that it is up to the corresponding HEI how to go about reviewing their corresponding programs. So I think in order to come up with that holistic adaptive learning environment, number one, we have to go to the curriculum itself and see where is our learner there. How would the learner, be learning all this number of competencies, learning outcomes, and to provide that particular learning experience. Ida has mentioned, maybe the students will get bored if we're going to have an asynchronous meeting for 3 hours. But if you're going to give them for game-based learning, it would be a different story. And also, Henry has mentioned outcomes. Assessment now would be more on skills development, skills-based outcomes, outputs rather than the usual, test, standardized test, etc., etc. And of course, we have to, especially in the context of the Philippines, we are an island group. There are different types of learners, those who have full access to connectivity and bandwidth and technology, intermittent access, or those who don't have really access. So we really have to cater to those different types of learners, may it be through an entirely online for those who full access, blended for intermittent, or even offline learning. And the Department of Education now, as well as some HEI, we're doing this now at the National Teachers College. We're doing now modules for modular education for our students who cannot afford to, go online 24 hours or full access. they could go to modular education. And of course, there should be, a continuous communication between all the stakeholders. You mentioned parents. Yeah, I'm still waiting for policies about home-based learning because
Yeah,
now,
that's it
yeah,
here.
yes, because now parents now are the co-teachers. They are now the co-facilitators. So
Yeah.
parents now would really have to be oriented. They have
Yes.
to be, they have to be guided accordingly how they would
Mhm.
facilitate learning in a home-based environment. So yeah, those are some of the challenges, and maybe there are also some of the opportunities, that we could set forth for flexible, open, or even offline learning.
Mhm. And if
Dr.
you don't mind me adding to that
Ida,
too.
Yes,
yeah, Ida,
yes,
go.
yes, Ida.
Yeah, so parents to me are the biggest part of the conversation,
Yeah,
really, when you think about it all, right? Because the
yes,
students leave home. And so when we think about it as educators, it's really what's this partnership meant to look like and how do we facilitate it?
yes.
And so a lot of our educators that I've worked with, they've done such phenomenal things where they've really came up with ways of, if I summarize it really, it would be one of the things that they really focused on was streamlining communications. So when we had moved to remote, we started shooting everybody with an email, go to this website, and then by the way, there's this other app and this one and this one. So all the parents were like, "Whoa, I just never even knew these existed." So that was
Yeah.
the first thing, right?
Yeah.
And so as one of the main strategies to think about, even for our parents, is, how do we streamline those communications? So our educators came up with ways where they, for example, used Buncee to create different schedules. So it would be very simple, straightforward. They'd say, on a weekly basis, this is exactly what you'd expect for your lesson plan. This is what you would access. This is what you would do at this time of the day. And then, maybe you go on to a synchronous environment or so, right? So they made schedules. But at the same time, the next part of it was, once you make all of these materials that you're sending out to them, the different resources that they need to share with their kids, the next thing is that you have to make it much more consistent so that they know this is the time of day I'm going to expect it of the week. And so it's not like, oh, I'm going to check it at 8 in the morning or now 3 p.m. And then it's all 10 teachers that are now sending it all over to them. So streamlining the communication is another part of it.
Mm,
And then at the same time, the big part of it was also the relationship and how do you facilitate the relationship, right? Because that's a big part, especially when it comes to the next school year, where you imagine, if you guys are also going to just be remote, you've never met the kids and you've never met,
Yeah. True,
parents.
true.
Yeah, and
Yes.
what I've seen as examples is where people
Agree.
are using Buncee just to build, introductions about themselves. It could be simple as that. They record a video about themselves, get the parents to get to know you as an educator, what your goals are, how you want to work with them. And then they make little letters and everything in a Buncee or so. So those are some of the strategies I would suggest for building that relationship with parents.
mm.
Yeah.
One of the strategies that we're doing for the pilot schools that we are, consulting with us would be to have that parent orientation. And the parent orientation is a whole day affair. It's like, really like the traditional coming to school, but this time parents would be, they would have sessions for Q&A. They would have webinars for how to set up the learning environment, how to, plan the schedule of the students, if they are sharing their devices at home, etc., etc. So it should be really, really a big part now of the conversation.
Dr. Pitagan and Ida, you mentioned about you talk about extensively about communication and orientation. I was online yesterday with my webinar, and there was a question about parents. The big question was really parents are not ready, and my simple answer to that was you need to train and orient them.
Yes.
Don't wait for them to come to you.
Yes.
You go to the parents, and I was forced to say, and this was in a light. It's not that serious, but I wanted to hit it hard, and I would say, if these parents can go to the barangay hall or can go to the town hall to get financial support, what will stop them from going to the same place for them to listen to teachers and tell them that this is their job? I mean, right? I mean, people can go out still, can get financial support from the government. Why not devise a day like plan a day. It's like an orientation for for parents for distance learning. But yeah, I do understand. I mean, communication. We can find ways. We can find ways on how to do that. We've been slowly touching about challenges. So that's parent communication. That's one of the challenges. I want to hear from Mayo also. I'm very interested because I've been reading Mayo's posts in Facebook, and we've been doing some podcasts, and she mentioned about the challenges. If you hear Japan, you would say, "Oh, technology," right? But Mayo was like one time she told me, "No, no, in our part, that's a big
Never,
problem."
never.
Yeah. Mayo, can you tell us your experience about distance learning? The struggle that you have.
All right, so first of all, I would like to tell a little bit about the technological environment in Japan. So, according to OECD, the ICT environment in Japan in Japanese classroom is maybe quite low. Maybe around 50 place out of 65 or something. They're quite low. Yeah. So in my case, I teach in a rural community, and not only parents, but also students and teachers are not engaged with using technology in the classroom. And the first challenges we are faced with is like the digital competency, the competency that you should have as a digital citizens, and also the know-how of how to use technology. Like even the smartphones, they can use smartphones and they can check Twitters, but they don't know how to use Zoom or how to use Google Classroom or Microsoft Teams. They don't know how to use it. And when I conducted a seminar to my fellow teachers, my colleagues, they even didn't know how to sign in the Microsoft account. So they said, "Oh, what is account? What is this? Is this like a mail address? Oh, you gave us a mail address. That's perfect." And that's it. So I need to train that point first. So what I learned was the step by step was really, really important. So we also need to be very patient, And what I did was I made a manual of how to use some tools, digital tools, and how to post on the tools. We can't give any assignment, but because that's too difficult for other teachers to do that. So also I created a video guide and uploaded on the YouTube so that parents and teachers can watch it. Yeah, and I did only for my teachers and only for my students, but then teachers from other school listened to the story and they asked me to share the video clip and manuals with them. So yeah, in the prefecture, I gave my manuals to every school, maybe not every school, but yeah, many schools. So this kind of step by step is really important, and this could be the kind of solution to get over the challenges we are faced with. Yeah.
Mio, you meant, I think the big picture there was, I think the big perspective or issue there is readiness, right? How ready are teachers? I mean, like, there's digital competency, like digital teaching readiness. On the side of the parents and the students, they also need to be ready, like to be ready to learn with technology skills. And even with the other modalities, for Mio and Eda, for example, in the Philippines, we have different modalities. We're exploring, print-based is, I think, one of the most, the options, the best option that a lot of schools will have. So we're exploring radio-based instruction and TV-based instruction, which I think it's very, very good, but I cannot imagine how we're gonna do that with K to 12 grade level and more than 5 subjects. So I don't know how will that happen. But you mentioned about readiness, teacher readiness, student readiness, parents readiness, and I wanna bring Henry here. Henry has been like guiding guiding teachers and school leaders on this matter? And also as a school leader, I'm pretty sure Henry has an experience of this. If this is the challenge that we see right now, Mio has done her part. Henry, if we try to expand it further, what could be some ways to help even parents and students be ready also?
Thank you for that, Jim. I guess aside from first, no, I want to talk about these challenges. I agree. I totally agree that the obvious part or the obvious challenges could be connectivity, class size, etc. But I guess the biggest challenge that we are facing right now is the level of confidence of our educators. Okay,
Mm.
they know how to teach their content. They know how to manipulate the competencies, etc. But they are not that confident when it comes to the new mode we are using right now. And how can we address or how can we increase that quote unquote confidence level of our teachers? We are expected to provide with trainings. And when I say trainings, I think we can, for now, forego of the content-based trainings, but instead we can give them or we can offer some tools, some technological tools or some ODL concepts or ODL basics that can increase their level of confidence. Okay? We are expected as well to transition from our old definition of professional development to a more applicable professional development program from our school. So, for example, if before we allocate funds, sending our educators to seminars, to different activities, probably now we can allow them to enroll in different online based seminars, webinars. We are very privileged to have, for example, empowerED right now. We have many free webinars that can help or that can boost that level of confidence. So that's number one. Second, I think the home setup is also challenging, especially with our underprivileged members of this society. Like, for example, in our online distance learning, students are expected to come up with their learning space, for example. But how can our underprivileged group do that if they only live in one square type of home, wherein that square type of house is their space for eating, for sleeping, and for everything. So we are, yes, I want to be balanced here. Okay, in the private education group, maybe they have a room for learning or a room or a space for this ODL, but we are expected to at least consider also the majority group of our society. And lastly, we're talking about bringing other stakeholders on board. We have the alumni group, we have our student representatives, we have our parents, we have our staff, and other stakeholders. We need to consider different aspects like spiritual, social, mental. In the case of De La Salle Zobel, we allocated or we reserved Wednesdays for these types of activities. For example, we offer clubs, we offer session with guidance counselors, we offer so in a 5-day calendar, for example, we allocated Wednesday as our pause day, as our every Wednesday, so that they will be given that opportunity to pause, to reflect, to assess what went well, what went wrong, what are the challenges, etc. So I guess this is a, I want to be balanced here. a big challenge, but I am positive that with creative educators and administrators, we can do things well.
Henry Henry was describing. I was like, yeah, Henry. My apartment is also that type. It's just a box where everything is a studio type apartment. And it's struggle. It's a struggle. I think that's one reality. Can I expand that? Try to put that situation on another level. I mean, like, we're very much familiar with online distance learning. Some of the questions usually in the past webinars discussion would be, how about for those who will not do online distance learning? How about those who will do print based modules? I mean, like, how do we've been talking about communication, collaboration. What are your thoughts? I don't know how we're gonna do this. I have some thoughts in mind, but I want to listen first. How do we enable, like, I mean, the design of the modules? It's parents and students will just be dependent on the modules, right? So how will we foster communication? Henry mentioned about non-academic aspect of education, which is very, very important. um I don't know if Eda has an experience in New York, something like that, with her, or maybe around the world conversation with teachers that you're supporting. I mean, Eda, you have a technology platform, but how can we try, or maybe anyone, how could we try to go beyond that and still, look at the other modalities?
For the print base is what you mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Those who don't have like access to internet,
Yeah,
how
I
we can
mean,
foster
truthfully,
communication?
one of the examples I'll just say, for she's an educator out in Pennsylvania. So one of her main challenges, especially when she got introduced to Buncee, was, first of all, do my students really need to have a device to access it? So everyone literally around the world has resource constraints, whether you're US or not. So in any case, so her delivery method was, what she would do is she'd put together her lesson plan, and then she would actually make the concerted effort to mail it out to her family. So what she would do is put that together every month, and that was, I think, really empowering. But she said the reason that it was very successful for her in the way that she's done it is her focus at that point was making it very visually engaging in terms of the content. So especially when you're not going to be together and then you're not able to communicate it out in a way that would be engaging for your kids, your next best step is definitely to figure out the different modalities in terms of the different multimodal approaches and multimedia based, assets that you can actually create. So then you start thinking about what are the visuals that would actually support, maybe it's vocabulary learning or even just the math learning. So it's really now at that point understanding or giving the teachers maybe more training on, just understanding how to create content that, helps to take it to another level, especially if you can't do it online for them.
Thank you, Ida. So it's very important that when we design modules that are not, accessible online, I mean, the printed ones, we explore all the different, how do you call that? All the different ways and means to engage, right? I mean, this is what I've been saying a while ago. For those creating modules out there, you're not just creating lecture notes.
Yes.
Modules are not, I don't know, modules are not
Yes,
lecture
agree.
notes that they will just read. It's actually the learning experience is the module itself. I don't know, Dr. Pitagan, if I'm correct. This is in distance education, the guided didactic conversation.
Yes.
The idea that the module itself should be talking, quote and unquote, to the student. It's
Yes.
your extension as a teacher. So that's something that we have to consider right now.
Yes. Remember that the printed module, in a sense, cannot parrot the interactivity, collaborativeness, and communication of an online learning or that of the face-to-face. So, and a module is a standalone resource. It could be, by the student or by the student of the parent. So I like the idea of Ida that we could foster that interactivity, we could foster that sense of communication by making the module more engaging to our learners. So that I think the first step in module design is we have to analyze what are the contents that are essential, what are the different types of learners, and how do we now make it into a learning module. This is not just your notes, or this is not your references that the students will. The module in itself should stand alone as a module guide, as a learning guide. So I think the instructional design aspect of that should be very, very well trained to our teachers. What are the parts of it? What are the parts that would work? Eda has mentioned that most of our learners are now visuals, so there should be a lot of more visualization of content, especially those of the abstract one. Even the assessment is different when it comes to module. I am now part of a team in DepEd that is now putting alternative learning systems, you know, the ALS of the Philippines, into an online learning modality. But when we look at the module, although the module is, I think, quite old and it needs updating, but the module itself is really I must say, a good instructional design framework in which I think DepEd or even the higher education could look into to promulgate module design. In NTC, we started doing our modules. And say, for example, a module would not be more than 30 pages. It should encapsulate all the essential learning competencies and integrative assessment. It should be, you know, given to the student, taking into account how they would manage their time, how they would manage their learning, how the parents would facilitate their own learning, etc., etc. So I think these are all the variables for module design. And I think both the HEIs and the Department of Education should really come forth with, you know, a holistic, inclusive policy on how to make module design. Because I think, as Dr. Henry has mentioned, I think a large percentage of our population would opt to have that module design. Another crucial question is, if we're going to giving the students the printed module, do we provide on-demand consultation?
Exactly. Feedback.
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 Because now the framework that the institutions are looking now, the student will enroll, they will get the module, and maybe after 2 weeks they will drop it off, so someone would, you know, check it and then get again, etc., etc. But maybe because we are the texting capital of the world,
yes,
we send around 2 billion. Yes, we send 2 billion texts every day. So maybe there should be, you know, an on-demand consultation together with the module. The student could, you know, text a teacher, you know, if there are some clarification of sorts in the module. I think that's a paradigm or a framework that we could also look into.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, just to add to that too. So I think it's a big question about summative assessments, right? So if your students are independent and you're not going to have your educator there, does it fully matter in a real sense? Because at the end of the day, your real goal is just to help encourage them to learn, right?
Yeah.
And when you think about the summative assessments, it's, you know, are you really going to grade them in the real sense? Just like you said, somebody else can check off a box for them.
Yes.
So I think the real key here is when you think about independent learners, it's about the authenticity of that kid. You know, how do you get them to get that agency out of themselves and that independence? And so my honest answer is encourage them to create. You know, and so it's more about, can you give those students that choice and that voice where they're able to create their own content, literally, whether it's, you know, they're creating their own video or they're writing their own blog, just different avenues for them to create just content around for themselves, and then be able to share that back out in an avenue that works for them. And maybe it's they send it back to you through Facebook or even as a text message.
Yes.
On the students being independent creators more so.
Yeah.
You know, I had yesterday was my live session, live lecture. That's I'm really putting live lectures on YouTube. It's like an informal class, and we talk about assessment. And then in the end, I was like, you know, this is distance education. Why are you so afraid about cheating and parent intervention? in the end, they're independent learners. I think we need to change the way we see assessment, the way we see education. We don't trust our
Yes.
students and our parents. Like Eda has mentioned, it's independent learning. If they cheat, if they have so much intervention from other people, it was their choice. Who's the one losing the opportunity to learn? It's not the teacher. We don't even have any way to prove that they have cheated. We will never know. But I think one thing that I wanted to I really brought out as a conversation, which is I will invite you next time to talk about this. Um, what I mean, like I asked them, I really asked them, and they were participating first time in YouTube, like real time participation. What is pushing our students to cheat, or for our parents to intervene so much? Is it the way we see grades,
Yes.
the way we define a good student with grades?
Yes.
Because of honors? There are a lot of reasons there, but that's another episode, and I hope you'll be there. but yeah, I think we've really mentioned a lot of challenges right now. We're almost going to our open forum. So for those people who are watching us right now, start typing in your comments. We will go through them, or questions later. But yeah, just keep them and we'll talk about your questions and ask these good, amazing people in our show right now. One important thought, and innovation, we see a lot of innovation. We see a lot of good work from teachers, especially when there's crisis. Crisis is the mother of innovation, right?
Yes.
We're not necessarily asking teachers to innovate right now. We're basically just, giving ideas, helping teachers to quote and unquote survive. We will survive. So that's my final question. How will teachers survive? Before we go to the questions, how will teachers survive this new thing?
Cue the I will survive.
Yeah. You can sing it later. Anyone? Mio?
Yeah, I can go, but from an outside perspective, I'm very big on the power of community. So, and I'll frame it in two different ways. One is just on our last topic about student individuality, engagement, agency itself. At the end of the day, when we think about learning, all it really is that we want our students to be able, or to have that encouragement to be curious or to explore on their own. Is it really a question about grades in that sense? And so my point about the power of community being this sort of way for us to ensure that we're successful in this new world of learning that we find ourselves in is that we start to realize it's those connections of how do we work together to be able to encourage our students who really want to continue to engage. And so truthfully, that's my biggest sense. It's really the power of community and being able to build those relationships with one another.
Thank you, Eda. Wonderful thought about community. I think that we keep on pushing that it's the solution is not on the hands of your principal or your teacher. The solution is on the hands of everyone in the community.
Yes.
And one thing I forgot to mention, which I should have really clarified too, is when you had both spoken before about, the need for training, for our teachers. I think especially for you, Mio, where you're actually creating those handbooks yourself, I think what happens is that our school community really thinks it's their onus, where they have to develop this content. But at the same time, you should be able to rely on, teams like ours, like Buncee or Microsoft or Google, whoever it might be, so that they could actually provide that support where you're able to support the teachers, but at the same time, the parents that are hoping to deliver. So you shouldn't take that onus. And that's where I say it's really community, school community, and, maybe the tools that you're using.
So Eda, I think that's also emphasized that if there are tools out there, if there are resources out there who can really help you as a teacher, use them so that you can focus, realign your focus and energy to more to other essential aspects like building relationship. It's the same thought in whatever mode of education. If there are tools out there that could help you make your work better or more efficient, use them so that you can focus on building relationship with your students. I love your point, Eda. And everyone's there. Check out Buncee. It's a great. Eda is communicating with the Department of Education, right, Eda?
Yes, we'll be doing a live session also, actually.
Right. So wonderful. So everyone, please wait for that. Eda will maybe later before we end. You can speak about it so that they can follow that webinar. Let's shift to the other side of the world. Maybe our neighbor, Japan. Mio, how have you been surviving? Mio has been in the distance education mode for a long time now. So Mio, how have you been surviving? And maybe your tip to our audience.
All right, so maybe a little bit philosophical, but I always think that we should keep a kind of certain creed as a teacher. So actually, technology itself doesn't matter. The learning and your creed matter. So what do you want to do with distance learning, and what do you want to teach? That's the point. We shouldn't move on. We shouldn't. We should keep. So also the readiness matter, like before pandemic I used distance learning, and it enables students and teachers learn more before general classroom. And after pandemic, many teachers started to learn about remote learning, and they tend to focus on technology itself, but it's not. So I read a live comment, and some teachers mentioned that the majority of students have an internet access or device, and minority doesn't have the access, and we need to care that. And that's the important point, I guess. And we also need to care those students who don't have internet access or who don't have their devices with internet connection. So we need to tell them that we care the students, we care them, and in that way we need to keep the connection with them. And also to do that, creativity matters. So we need ideas. So we need to we need to have a kind of idea that how we can deal with this situation, how we can get over this situation, and then this and this then. So creativity matters. Do you know what I mean? Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Mio.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mio, and we'll be cheering for you, like for every teacher right now. Henry, how are you surviving? Henry just started their online distance learning.
Well, while I would like while I agree also with Eda that we have a variety, we have many available resources out there. I want also to challenge our educators to start creating their own contents. No, I want to tap a bit that idea of curation versus creation. Sometimes our learners learn more when we are the one physically talking to them, or the actor of that material is their own educator. Okay, so the challenge now is, while we have so many tech companies who are very much willing to assist us, we need to start creating our own content that, I guess, are much applicable and contextualized to our own needs as a country. I am an advocate of contextualized education. Okay, wherein I want to promote this idea that our education is here to address certain challenges and issues we are facing now as a country. And we can only do that if we create our own contents. If we contextualize, if we localize this online distance learning, so that we can help in the development or in the progression of our country as well. Second item, I want to talk about integration. Our country, no, we are very, very, very subject oriented. I'm a Filipino teacher, I'll teach Filipino. I'm a math teacher, I'll teach math. I'll teach But I guess with online distance learning, with the limitations we are facing right now, we are also expected to integrate with different disciplines, with different subject areas. For example, in De La Salle Zobel, we have 12 weeks, for example, contact time, teaching our own subjects. But I guess the last 2 or 3 weeks, we can allocate those weeks for possible integrations, one project or one output targeting different learning areas, so that we can let our learners experience what is the connection of this subject to this subject to that subject. For senior high school group, we have research courses. Maybe we can anchor all our outputs, all our performance tasks to the research subject. Okay, so integration. And lastly, I guess some practical surviving tips for this kind of learning. Number one, uh, I want to tell our educators, don't be afraid to fail. Okay?
Mm.
Don't be afraid to fail. We will all fail at some points. Okay? We learn from our mistakes. That's very cliche statement, but that's very realistic nowadays. And we celebrate our failures together. We learn from our challenges as educators. But the biggest point, at the end of the day, we learn from these challenges. Okay, we can only do so much as educators, but we cannot stop from trying. Okay, we cannot stop from exploring the possibilities, and we can only do that if, again, we will accept the current scenario of our education. Okay, so 3 items, I guess, Jim: creation versus curation, integration, and the practical tips at the end.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much, Dr. Henry. That was a wonderful lecture. I understand where Henry's coming from. I understand where Henry's coming from. I think what I one of the we have a upcoming podcast session. I think we've recorded it, Dr. Pitagan, and we talk
Yeah.
about open educational resources. And there's always the idea of content creation, content curation, and content contextualization. Dr. Henry, I think, is coming from the fact that there are subjects in the Philippines, like Filipino, Araling Panlipunan, or social studies, that we don't have much resources right now.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
teachers really need to create resources for them. Maybe Buncee could be helpful tomorrow. Is that tomorrow for the webinar? Let's find out later. Dr. Pitagan, your tips before. I have one important questions here we might need to really answer.
Okay.
So, Dr.
Uh,
Pitagan, your tips first.
Okay. So March 10, when the ACQ was declared, the National Teachers College has met with the Academic Council. So right there and there, we set forth, decisions, framework, systems on how we would continue education. That is why at NTC, we never stop the learning and teaching. We even have 2 cycles for summer. Why? Number one, because of what Eda is saying, we have a very collaborative, solid-based community of teachers and administrators. It was very challenging, especially for the first timer. We have to, hold their hand all throughout the process in coming up with the curriculum, setting forth their online communities, their online learning. There are a lot of training for learning, for unlearning, for relearning, even trainings for reskilling, upskilling, multi-skilling. So really, really, that sense of community within the higher education institutions is really instrumental on how you push forth flexible, resilient, or remote learning. And I think that sense of community is also expanded into local government units now, are providing tablets for,
For
for
school.
public schools.
Yeah.
And I'm telling teachers now, or even administrator, this is the time you call on your mayor. Where is your
Yes.
promise during the campaign?
Yes.
You promise you will give tablets and provide bandwidth. So this is an opportune time that really the community would really have to work together to continue learning. And also teachers are the foot soldiers. Diba? They're the one, who would design. They are the one who would, conduct the sync session. They would be the assessor and even the facilitators of an online learning environment. So dear teachers, this is really a time for change. We
Yeah.
have to embrace this. There's a burning question whether
Yes.
technology would replace teachers, right? Whether AI someday would replace that. It's like, my answer is no. But teachers who will not integrate technology would be replaced by those who do. That's
Exactly.
the reality of life now. So, teachers, we have to embrace this change. We have to really, upskill ourselves, relearn what we've been learning, and putting, that paradigm of putting what I'm doing face to face into an online will not work. It
That's a
will
big
not work.
no-no.
I will check attendance, I will lecture for, and then give them tests, and it will not work. So we have to really, value what our teachers are doing right now. We have to hold their hand. We have to encourage them. I love what Henry is saying, imbibing that we are on this together, and yet we will fail together also. Because
Yes, yes.
I love that. Kaya nga pumapalakpak ako kanina because this is this is an emerging framework of education. Never in our
Yeah.
lifetime we have a pandemic that cuts across different countries in the world. So emerging po, the operative word is emerging. These are, rapid prototyping of solutions, and there will
Yes.
be things that will work and things that will not work. And I also love what Mio is saying. Technology is not the answer to all. The presence of technology would not guarantee learning.
True, true.
Diba, if you purport a multimedia, it is the good instructional design. It is the good
Yeah.
content curation. It is how you deliver, how you integrate it into your online learning. Because most of us, I like this, I will put this, without even knowing the value of that corresponding technology. So, and lastly,
I think everyone has notes.
and lastly, on the learners who are now viewing this, may you be a lifelong learner, a life-wide
Yeah.
learner, diba? For those who are pursuing their graduate education, especially our teachers, because everyone would have to be, we have to be lifelong learners, we have to be life-wide learners, and this is part of that, being
Yeah.
adaptive, being resilient in the time of change. So hopefully, all of this would come to play. We are, I was in a webinar for Southeast Asia, and it is with a happy note. This is recorded that the
This
Philippines.
is live. This is live. Dr. Ferdy, this is live.
This is well, when it is a happy note that the Philippines has put forth, solutions and systems and framework, I think well ahead of other, at least Southeast Asian nations. And I really congratulate the Filipino teacher and leadership.
It's
Although
yeah,
yes, thank you
it's just
very
a
much.
matter. It's just a matter now of making it real in the
Yes,
action now. I think
yes.
that's one of the reasons why we're bringing this out, because a lot of you have your own experiences. Ida has her experience of supporting teachers, and I'm really grateful. This has been a very fruitful, insightful, and our audience, our viewers are agreeing with us. They say that we have been making a good conversation. Before I transition to our questions, because there are some questions here that we need to answer and clarify, can I just say about the importance of collaboration? Real talk right now, and I'll just say it quietly, and I will not discreetly, and I will not explain further. Maybe because our education system, even for teachers, it's always a matter of, I do this innovation, I will not share it because people will copy it. I
Mm,
That has been the work really in so many schools.
mm,
That's why collaboration it's really coming out slowly. It's really hard for others to do because some teachers were not really trained to collaborate. It's always me against other teachers so that I get promoted, so that I get the certificate and this and that. Real talk, I will not explain what's
Yes.
happening. We stopped doing that because we are models of collaboration for our students. So, you have to walk the talk now.
yeah.
Anyway, let's go to the question. There's a question here. I'm gonna read it, and I think we need to unpack this because there might be some misconceptions here. Um, Question here is: would you agree to give a student a passing score, even if he didn't do your online exercise as to comply your requirement of the requirements as a teacher? Since in new norm, there should be no student left behind. I think we need to clarify what
Mm.
we mean by no student left behind. Does it mean passing everyone, even if
No,
they're not performing well?
no,
Our resounding answer is
no.
no. No. So
Uh,
can we clarify what no student left behind mean?
no student left behind means that we are exploring all possibilities so that all students would be included into the new learning process. That is why we have blended, we have online, we have correspondence education, so that no matter what state they are in, will be included. But
Yeah.
in terms of grade, it doesn't necessarily follow that they will all pass. And
Mm.
and Jim, I think the question there is the test.
Pass. Yeah, I
How you that?
agree.
Yeah, okay, Henry, you go. This is your the task and the test. Yes, Henry, please clarify. Oo.
Well, I guess the idea of the mass promotion, the idea of giving all of them a passing mark
Yeah.
is a no-no for me.
Oo.
Okay? But instead, we provide our learners additional opportunities to
Mm,
target that passing mark, or
mm,
for them to go to the next level, because at the end of the day our students will be at the losing end here if we will just pass them without learning. Okay,
mm,
so I guess instead, this is the reason why I am also pushing for an individualized learning approach. Though again, I totally understand the class size will again be challenging here, but I guess we need to categorize our students, not to
mm.
label them, but to assist them. For example, those having some difficulties learning math, you provide them with additional resources, additional exercises, additional input for them to cope up, so that no one will be left behind. But not that traditional thinking that because the government is paying for their tuition fee or assisting them financially, we need to pass all of our students.
Mm.
This will be challenging. That's why our level of reading comprehension is challenging as well, because of
Yeah.
that kind of thinking. So I
Oo.
Henry?
guess, yes, our goal is to bring them all to the next level, but
Mm.
not just to pass them, okay?
Oo.
But to
Yeah,
provide
yeah.
them with additional learning opportunities.
I'm
Oo.
just gonna butt in because this is a very. I'm just gonna give a background to Mio and Eda because
Mm.
this is a very. I think that this is a very contextualized question, and there's a follow up here. I think let's. I don't know. We have this idea of mass promotion because they said. I don't know how are we going to clarify
Mm.
this, but it's as if teachers cannot fail. No, I don't think. I don't think that's the way we understand
Yes.
no one left behind.
Yes.
It's not. Teachers can fail,
Yes.
especially if they do not really achieve the standards.
Yes.
It's just a matter of being strong and saying to your principal,
Mm.
"No, we will fail this, even if will affect the." Because this is a very delicate topic, and I
Oo.
don't want to go live about this. But we've heard it from Dep Ed before, especially when the issue of literacy came out, right?
Mm.
There's a misunderstanding here, and I believe that maybe some school principals could talk to their teachers about this because
Mm.
teachers can fail,
Yes.
especially if they have exhausted everything. Dr.
Yes.
Pitagan, please go.
I think it will boil down how we see assessment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because assessment in the Philippines is very
Yes.
content-based, knowledge-based. It's the standardized multiple
Knowledge
questions, etc.
based.
Yeah, so it is. Say for example, in higher education institution, the CHED has ordained excuse my words, or universities and colleges should be outcome based. So thereby, we should really focus on the outcomes, the learning outcomes, and part of that learning outcomes could be a skill. It could be
Yeah.
it could be creativity, it could be communication, it could be critical thinking, it could be collaboration. It could not be a score test. So I think this is where the disconnect is happening. So when you fail in your test, it means to say that I'm going to fail you. No,
No. Yeah.
no, no.
I well.
I like what Henry has said. We should extend opportunities for our students. But if those opportunities, those, whatever extension we may have been exhausted, and the students still is failing, then we can fail. Failing students are those who are not participating. Failing students are those who are not attending sync session. Failing students are those who are just passing, mediocre outputs. Those are failing students. But if we see that our students are doing their best, but they are so stressed out during this time, right? They cannot attend our sync session because of the internet connection that we have.
Or the pandemic, anxiety.
Precisely.
Right.
So, yeah, we really have to contextualize that no one is left behind.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the clarification. So, Mio and Eda, that has been a conversation actually in the Philippines even before the PISA result came out. I think that was one of their said reasons. Anyway, there's a question here earlier. I cannot find it anymore, but it talks about this is the next topic. By the way, next week we talk about how do we teach laboratory courses. How can we ensure that STEAM innovation, like STEM innovation, is really happening when students are not there, when a lot of the things are skill based. This has been a major problem for senior high school. I think Henry's problem will be this one. Dr. Pitagan for the higher education. What about laboratory courses? Maybe Mio in Japan, I don't know. Like lab courses, laboratory courses. How are they going to do that right now? Or is it an essential component of distance education at this moment? Right? I don't know. If we find it very important, how are we going to enable that? I don't know. I don't have a perfect answer to this. Maybe just some thoughts. It's okay also. It's okay also if we cannot handle this question.
Okay. I'm not sure. I have no idea actually. Sorry.
They use an English teacher.
The ICT level in Japan is quite low compared to other countries, sadly. So, to be very honest, we don't have a specific module or a specific curriculum about dealing with the distance learning. So every teacher work individually, or each school work individually, not the Board of Education level, not the provincial level, or not the national level. We are organizing and arranging the plan to implement the plan of using more technology. And actually, the Ministry of Education in Japan decided to give a kind of budget to a certain budget to each school to buy devices or to get the better internet access, but it will be in the winter, like December.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we don't know what will happen. So yeah, still we are in confusion.
It's okay, Mio. I think this has been one of the big questions, really. Like, how do you do experiments? If those are essential learning competencies, outcomes, for example, how do we enable them? I don't know. We don't need to answer this. I'm trying to bring people to answer this for us next week. But one of the things that, for higher ed, for example, I think they're exploring maybe parking this for the next term. If the pandemic is okay, they can they can now go to school. Maybe those courses can wait. Maybe we can focus on the more idea-based theoretical aspect for now. I don't know, we can explore like simulation, for example, has been really coming out. Simulation of I don't how do you call that, experiments or courses. I don't know if we can answer that, but it's okay. We don't have to we don't have to answer that. That's one of the
Jim,
concerns.
yeah,
Dr.
yeah. Some HEIs now are as you mentioned, some HEI now are parking the laboratory courses, especially for the hardcore sciences, or for
Yeah.
those courses who would really need laboratory, skills. Say, for example, nursing or even HRM or even the our marine sciences. So they,
Oh my God, marine sciences.
how do you not no amount of simulation or interactive, platforms can simulate what they can do. Yeah. But I think for K to 12, it could be manageable at home as long as the parents are there. As I mentioned, we've been piloting some schools, and we are very shocked on how teachers have designed, for example, the concept of buoyancy, or
Yeah.
the concept of
Yes.
solid and liquid, or but not burning, physics and chemistry. That could be, but at least there are some manageable aspects of that laboratory that could be done at home. It's more, well, for one, it's more authentic. It's more authentic learning. It's more real life. But in HPIs, yes, most of the courses are being parked. Yes, but in NTC, we have training. We have a certificate course for laboratory courses. How do you now integrate
Wow.
into your instructional design these laboratory courses for K to 12 and HDIs?
Yes,
Yes.
a lot of curious teachers out there. So take
Yes.
note, NPC National Teachers College. That's the place of doing that.
Yes.
Ida, I don't know if this is something that you could cover. Maybe.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think I'm not an expert in this space for sure in this instance, but I know of several AR, augmented reality, virtual reality platforms, and I think that's where this sort of direction is headed, especially when you want to put a student in an environment where they still want to be able to do the science experiments, and it might even be about understanding the physical body, right? Where maybe it's a parts dissections and such. And so I think augmented reality and virtual reality technologies are really going to be the next key direction for it.
It's just again the question really is how do you make it like accessible to everyone? Is that accessible? I've noticed my hair just going up. I mean, it's really just a big question, and maybe this time we push the education further by making I don't know. It's not political, but maybe holding our national leaders to be responsible on pushing the agenda of more progressive, maybe more inclusive, adaptive way of education. So that I think that maybe is the best way to describe no student left behind.
Yes.
It's about a matter of access. Like the pandemic has really shown the haves and the have-nots, like more apparent, more clearer more than ever. Henry is so proud right now. He lives in Pasig. Their mayor has been really out there. Their mayor's really out there.
Yes. Go Mayor Vico.
Very proud. You see, he's very proud right now. But yeah, last question before we end. And I'm maybe Ida, you could stay a little bit because it's already 11:30 p.m. in New York. But
No worries.
I think this question again. Would it be okay if we let learners pass as long as they work hard on their modules?
Ano ba? Would it be okay?
Would it be okay if we let the learners pass as long as they work hard on their modules?
No. No.
It's really difficult. How you assess their work hard? Your work. How do you assess it?
Exactly.
I cannot understand.
Maybe Jim. Jim. We need to give Ida and Mio a quick background. Filipinos are very dramatic. We tend to pass our students
Henry
by
even
just merely seeing them crying or really finding. Really, if we see our students really finding very difficult time answering, we will pass them. But I think we need to rethink assessment, like what
True.
Doc mentioned a while ago. We pass them according to the competencies we are targeting, not according to the virtues or the values they are
Mhm.
showing us as educators, or rather as learners. So we need to again go back to the core, why we assess them, why we give assessment, why we give output based learning, etc., so that they will get the proper or the targeted competencies at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, I don't know. I think for me, it's just really a matter of rethink your assessment, or maybe give the credit where it's due. I mean, recognize the effort. That's very
Mm.
important, because we don't want to give also the message that your effort has gone to waste because in the end you did not pass. I mean, it's very important that we recognize the effort. I think Eda mentioned a while ago, our role is to inspire them, support them to
Mm.
continue learning. I mean, we've been really boxed into the idea of failing, passing, and all those kinds of stuff.
Mm.
But then in the end, our work as educator is, even if the student is failing, I think we need to
Mm.
recognize that and help the student,
Mm.
understand what the idea of failing means. That it's not the end of everything, but we
Yes.
need to recognize the effort, right? So
Yes.
yeah, Dr.
Uh,
Ferdy.
Jim, this is, I think, what Ida and Mio is mentioning a
Yeah,
while ago. If a student is working hard and failing, then we have to extend opportunities.
yeah,
Failing right away. Because if the student is putting forth the work, if the student is religiously, submitting outputs, although that outputs could be made, then we have to, extend opportunities, because the student, if working hard, really want to learn. Maybe somehow there's a disconnect between
mm,
what you're saying and what they are doing. So there should be
Yes.
more opportunities, more extended opportunities, so that the student would pass. Because actually, the student is working hard, as the question had
exactly.
mentioned. So extend, if your student, you see your students are really working hard, they really want to learn, and somehow there's the disconnect between their working hard and the output that they are submitting. There should be extended
I know.
opportunities, one-on-one consultation, finding where are the difficulties, etc., etc. This should be part of our job as a teacher.
Yeah, you know, I think we've really gone beyond our time already, but I'm really thankful for everyone here. I love the thoughts, and I think we've covered everything. A closing note, for example, a closing note now, because we don't want to keep everyone. It's lunchtime. Mio might be hungry also. Our audience might be
It's
hungry
okay, of
already.
course.
But I think one of the things that I would like uh, to just point out right now, to survive as a teacher at this time of the pandemic, it's really to open your lines of communication, collaborate, extend. I think it's more of extending yourself, opening yourself. Teachers are not that good in asking for help. I will do this on my own. I will do this on my own because I'm a teacher. I can do this. Let's always bring in, we always celebrate bayanihan, Filipino bayanihan, but we don't see that in education most of the time because it's always me as a teacher. I will not share this to you because it's my work. Right now at this time of the pandemic, more than ever, we need everyone to be working together. So I don't know, maybe that's our last note to survive this pandemic. Ina, I think made a good point there. Educators should continue inspiring students so that they will not stop learning. Can you imagine a society where people have stopped learning? I think that's our role right now. Side on the guide, facilitator, however we would like to call it, but that's our role. Whether would you call them up, conduct a remedial classes, it's your choice as a teacher. And like in every decision that we make, we put the learner at the center. I think that has been the resonating, the resounding message to everyone. So there, I'm just very grateful right now Thank you to Eda from New York, live in New York right now. Thank you so much. Eda, maybe you can talk about your webinar tomorrow.
Yes, so we're finalizing some of the details. So I will give the confirmation once it's ready, but it's intended to be this week. So technically it would be tomorrow at 9 a.m. on the DepEd channel. So if you want to check that one out, I'll be hosting, sharing a little bit more about Buncee, all of the different examples and ways that folks have been integrating it. But truthfully, I'm very big on the community side, just personally. So our educators are actually sharing even for Malaysia next week, if you guys want to tune in. So they'll be sharing many different strategies across literacy, making learning accessible. So I'll be able to share that resource as well, but it'll be a whole week of learning from different educators, literally across different grade levels and subject spaces. So yeah, if you want to contact me, it's eda@buncee.com.
All right. Thank you, Eda. Mio, thank you so much also. We're always keeping you as a friend of mine. Mio has been very, very supportive, and she's making really a great difference in education in Japan right now. So thank you so much, Mio, for being with us.
Yeah, thank you very much. Whenever I speak in this kind of conference, I always think that even if we are in a different country, we have a common as a teacher, as an educator. So yeah, please follow me on Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I generally tweet in Japanese, but you can check with the translation. Or yeah, I can if you send a direct mail via Twitter, I can send back to you in English. So yeah, please get engaged. Thank you very much, Jim.
Thank you, Mio. Henry, thank you so much. Um, I don't know, Henry has been just out there helping also. So thank you so much for your work, Henry.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay, so there's a lag. I think there's a lag. So thank you so much, Henry. We continue to pray for your community also as continue with your online distance learning. And finally, Dr. Pitagan has been really, really helpful. His expertise has really guided us in this conversation. Thank you so much, Dr. Pitagan. Final words: how NTC National Teacher College will continue supporting teachers right now.
Thank you very much, Jim. It's always a pleasure working with you. And thank you very much for our panelists. It's been a wonderful experience. If you want to be enlightened more and know what we are doing at the National Teachers College, please visit our sites. As I've mentioned, we are offering certificate courses for flexible learning, open educational resource, home-based learning, even wellness and health framework during the pandemic, and how do you do laboratory courses now during this pandemic. All these certificate courses could earn you points as units for your graduate study if you decide to pursue it with us. Again, this has been a very enlightening. I learned a lot from my co-panelists and Filipino educators. We've been through a lot. The Philippines is really a pandemic center. We've been with Marawi and Undoy and all other calamities, man-made and otherwise. And this pandemic is again testing our resiliency, and I fully believe in our capacity to weather this storm, to weather this storm and be the best educator, empowered educator that we can be.
All right. Yes. Thank you to everyone. I hope you felt empowered right now. To our empowered teachers, we continue to pray for everyone's safety and good health. Thank you so much. And we'll hope to have you next week for our live discussion. On Saturday, there's an exclusive edu lecture on strategies to keep your modules engaging, whether it's offline, online, or printed. So let's look at that. I invite you. That's on Saturday. That's around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then on Sunday, a very important topic that we need to discuss: how do we continue STEM laboratory courses at this time of the pandemic? So hopefully, we hope to see you there. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Henry, Dr. Ferdy, Mio. Keep safe in Japan. Eda, keep safe in New York also. All
Thank
right. So
you.
thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you. Take
The link
care.
is
Take
there.
care.
Don't forget
Bye.
to check on the evaluation to get your certificate. It's on the comment also. Check your spelling because our system uses your email address to send your certificate. Wrong spelling means the email just gonna bounce back to us and everything's just lost along the way. So check your spelling before sending. That's digital readiness.
Congrats,
Digital.
Jim. Congrats.
Thank you so much, everyone. And we'll see you next time. Stay safe.
Stay safe.